The Seattle dawn was a liar, promising calm with its pale gray light, while the city hummed with secrets ready to explode. I pulled my father's faded military jacket tighter around my shoulders, the frayed cuffs brushing my wrists like a whisper of his presence. The air smelled of damp asphalt and coffee from the corner diner, but my pulse thrummed with something heavier. A meeting at the hospital that could unravel everything had been poking at their mismanagement for months, filing complaints that made me a target. They called me a troublemaker behind closed doors, their voices low, but I heard them. My name is Aven, and I was done staying quiet. The jacket was stiff, its olive green fabric worn from years of my father's silent service. I pressed it against my chest before slipping it on, whispering, "Dad, I need you today." It was more than cloth. It was armor, a promise that I mattered in a world that tried to make me feel small. My boots hit the cracked sidewalk as I left my apartment, the neighborhood waking slowly. Mrs. Carter, tending her roses across the street, waved. "Stay safe, Aven," she called, her voice warm but edged with worry. I forced a smile, hands buried in the jacket's deep pockets, and kept walking. The hospital loomed ahead, a gray monolith under the overcast sky. I'd worked there for years, navigating its sterile halls, nodding to colleagues who now whispered about me. My complaints about mismanaged funds and patient care had stirred a hornet's nest. They weren't just circling me, they were closing in. My brother Caleb, a deputy with a badge he wore like a crown, never let me forget I was the family's quiet one. At every barbecue, he'd flash that badge while our sister Mara spun stories of influence and favors. I was just Aven, the one who showed up cleaned up and kept my mouth shut. Until now. The intersection near Pike Street buzzed with morning traffic, cars honking as I crossed. A police cruiser roared past, its lights slicing through the mist. I clutched my bag's strap, the weight of the meeting pressing harder with each step. The cruiser slowed, tires crunching on gravel as it pulled alongside me. My stomach tightened. The window rolled down, and Sheriff Nathan Holt leaned out, his smirk sharp as a blade. "Well, look at you," he drawled, eyes locking on the jacket. "Think that old rag means something?" I kept walking, my sneakers scuffing the pavement, but Nathan stepped out, his boots hitting the ground with a deliberate thud. "Stop right there, ma'am." His voice was loud, meant for the growing crowd. People slowing, phones out, whispers spreading like wildfire. I turned, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Is there a problem, Sheriff?" "Got a call about a suspect matching your description," he said, his tone mocking, eyes cold. "Need you to kneel right here." My heart pounded, loud enough I thought the whole street could hear it. "On what grounds?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my hands trembled in my pockets. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Nathan replied, his hand brushing his holster. The crowd thickened, a mother pulling her kid close, a man filming from across the street. I felt the pavements chill through my jeans as I sank to my knees, the jacket heavy on my shoulders. The morning air was sharp, biting at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the weight of Nathan's gaze. "Your daddy's jacket doesn't mean jack here," he said, tilting his head, his finger twitching near his gun. I closed my eyes, and in that darkness I saw my father's funeral. Fort Lewis, the flag folded tight, my mother's hands shaking as she clutched it. That jacket had been his shield, a symbol of honor, of promises kept. Now, kneeling on a Seattle sidewalk, it felt like a target painted on my back. I opened my eyes, meeting Nathan's stare, his gun now drawn, the barrel steady on my face. My lips parted to speak, but before a word could escape, a crack split the air. Pain seared through my shoulder, a white-hot graze that sent me sprawling onto the wet concrete. Blood bloomed through the jacket, warm and sticky as screams erupted around me. Phones clattered to the ground. Someone yelled for 911. I pressed my hand to the wound, my vision tunneling as I stared at the gray sky. The world tilted. Sirens wailed, blue lights flashed, and the distant chop of helicopter blades cut through the chaos. Then, soft in my ear, a voice I didn't expect, one I'd kept hidden even from myself. "Oven, hold on. Extraction initiated." I tried to lift my head, but darkness clawed at the edges of my sight. My fingers shook against the wound, the jacket soaking up blood like a dark confession. "Dad," I whispered, tasting copper. "They're going to find out who I am." The words were barely out when the world shrank to a pinpoint of sound and light. Paramedics swarmed, their hands quick, strapping me to a stretcher. Each jolt of the pavement sent fire through my shoulder, but I clung to consciousness, the jacket's weight grounding me. The ambulance lights blurred through the windows, flickering like a memory I didn't want. The last time I'd heard gunfire this close was at Dad's funeral, a 21-gun salute that cracked the Washington air. My mother had wept silently, holding that folded flag like it was all she had left. Now, as the paramedics shouted, "BP's dropping! Stay with us!" I smelled gun oil and starched uniforms, the past bleeding into the present. The hospital's harsh lights replaced the sky as they wheeled me in. Familiar faces, colleagues I'd passed daily, froze in shock, their eyes on the blood seeping through the jacket. I caught sight of Caleb in the hallway, his deputy badge glinting under the fluorescence, his face pale, lips tight. We'd never had much to say to each other. He was the hero, the protector, while I was the shadow holding things together. Now, seeing me bloodied on a gurney, his breath caught, though he hid it behind a clenched jaw. Behind him, Nathan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his gaze sweeping the room. His eyes flicked to the jacket, then to me, and for a split second his smirk returned before he buried it under fake concern. I saw it. He knew exactly what he'd done. They wheeled me into surgery, voices overlapping. 2 liters, wide open. Pulse weak, as anesthesia pulled me under. My father's voice echoed in the haze, from the night before his last deployment. "You'll know when it's your turn to stand, Avon." I was 9, drowning in that oversized jacket, promising in front of the mirror to protect, to be worthy of the name stitched above the pocket. I woke with a gasp, the hospital room sterile and still, antiseptic stinging my nose. Pain pulsed with every breath, my shoulder bandaged, an IV taped to my hand. The jacket hung on a chair, blood dried into its fabric like a map of the morning's betrayal. A faint vibration hummed under my pillow. I reached for it, wincing, and pulled out a burner phone, its screen cracked but alive. A message glowed in code only Dad would have taught me. "You have been activated." My pulse spiked, the monitors chirping in protest. Dad's warnings, whispered over late-night coffee, cloaked in stories of black ops and redacted files, weren't just paranoia. The jacket's RFID chip had triggered something. A dormant protocol pinging across a network I barely understood. Those helicopters weren't news choppers. The unmarked SUVs creeping into Seattle weren't for crowd control. They were here for me because of Nathan, because of what he knew I could uncover. I pushed myself up, teeth gritted against the fire in my shoulder. The world outside the window looked normal. Cars weaving through rain-slick streets, people living lives untouched by the war brewing beneath. But I knew better. This wasn't just about me kneeling in the street. It was about a truth they'd killed to bury. My fingers tightened around the bed rail, grounding me in the promise I'd made when I first wore Dad's jacket. If Nathan thought I'd stay quiet, he didn't know me at all. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm coming for you." The words hung in the antiseptic air as the monitors beeped steadily. Rain tapped the window, like a memory trying to break through. I was still here, breathing when I shouldn't be, each inhale a reminder of the fight ahead. The door cracked open, and my sister Mara slipped in, her heels clicking like gunfire on the tile. Her blazer was pressed, her hair perfect, but her eyes were cold, calculating. She held a folder, papers peeking out like threats. "Well, Avon," she said, closing the door with a soft click, "you've made a mess again." I didn't answer, watching as she pulled a chair close, sitting like she owned the room. "You think you're a hero now?" Her voice was too calm, each word laced with venom. "Dragging our family through the mud?" I swallowed, pain sharpening as I shifted. "Someone had to stand up." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Stand up? You're bleeding out in a hospital bed, clutching Dad's old jacket, bringing the media, the cops, everyone down on us." Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the papers, betraying the fear behind her mask. "It wasn't about me or the family name. It was about what Dad left behind, what she was desperate to protect." "What do you want, Mara?" I asked, voice low. She pushed the folder toward me, hand shaking. "Sign these. Non-disclosure. Say the shooting was a mistake. Drop your statements for the family." Her eyes locked on mine, pleading and threatening at once. I closed my eyes, the rain's rhythm pulling me back to Dad's boots on our porch, his metals clinking. "They'll come for what I left behind," he'd said. "You're the safeguard." I hadn't understood then, but I did now. Opening my eyes, I met Mara's glare. "You're afraid," I said softly. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, but her voice cracked. "You're afraid they'll take what you think is yours," I pressed. "Dad's jacket means more than your investments, your secrets." I pushed the papers away, the folder's edge slicing my bandaged hand. "You'll ruin everything," she hissed. "You'll lose everything." "Already almost did," I said, the memory of the street, blood, pavement, Nathan's gun flashing through me. "I'm not your scapegoat." Mara stood, chair scraping, her face a storm of anger and fear. "You're making a mistake, Avon." She smoothed her hair, hands trembling, and left, the door clicking shut like a warning. Night fell, rain easing to a drizzle. The nurses changed shifts, their footsteps soft in the hall. I drifted off, Mara's fear lingering in my mind. A soft creak woke me, the door opening. A nurse stepped in, her cap low, moving too quietly. Her hands were quick, pulling a syringe from her pocket, aiming for my IV. My gut screamed. I saw the tattoo on her wrist, a snake around a dagger, Nathan's cruise mark. I didn't think. I yanked the IV free, pain exploding as the needle tore out. She lunged, but I grabbed her wrist, twisting until the syringe dropped. "Wrong room," I hissed, shoving the call button. Alarms blared as she bolted, security's shouts echoing in the hall. I pressed my hand to my shoulder, blood seeping through the gown, dripping to the floor. The jacket sat on the chair, stained but unbroken. I pulled it on, its weight steadying me, and stared at the security camera's red light. "You picked the wrong soldiers, daughter," I said, voice clear. I peeled off the sensors, each beep fading like a door slamming on this place. In the bathroom, I locked the door and dialed a number from memory on a disposable phone. It rang twice. "It's Avon," I whispered. "Code Shadow Strike." A pause, then a gravelly voice. "Copy that." The line went dead. My reflection stared back. Pale, tangled hair, eyes burning with purpose. I wasn't hiding anymore. I stepped into the hall, nodding to the nurse at the desk, who avoided my gaze. Nathan stood at the far end talking to security, handing them a folder. "She's unstable," I heard him say, tapping my medical file. "For her safety." A guard's hand touched my shoulder. I met his eyes, calm. "Want me to prove how unstable I am, here or in court?" He hesitated, fingers twitching, then let go. Nathan's eyes met mine, fear flickering behind his badge. I gave him a small smile, not afraid anymore. The elevator doors closed, the security feed above the nurse's station showing me bloodied, jacket tight, eyes steady. My pocket vibrated. I pulled out a second burner phone. "You're live." They were watching, listening, every step recorded. I stepped into the lobby, Nathan waiting by the ambulance exit, leaning casually. "It didn't have to be this way, Avon," he said. "Sign the papers and it goes away." I stopped, tilting my head. "You're afraid of what I know." His eyes narrowed. "You're alone now." I stepped closer, seeing his jaw tighten. "Wrong. I'm awake." My fingers brushed the jacket's seam where a recorder blinked red, catching every word. "We'll see." A nurse, older, a friend of Dad's from the VFW, approached with a wheelchair. She nodded, silent, and I sat, pain flaring. We rolled past Nathan, his mouth opening but no words came. She pushed me to the rear lot, rain falling again, washing the air clean. The hospital faded behind us, its lights dim in the mist. I gripped the jacket, whispering, "You'll all see soon." The war was just beginning. The Portland safe house was a shadow of a building, squeezed between a laundromat's hum and a shuttered deli's cracked neon sign. Rain streaked the windows, the city's pulse muffled by the drizzle as I stepped inside, my father's jacket heavy with blood and promises. The air smelled of stale coffee and dust, the kind of place where secrets could hide but never rest. My shoulder throbbed, the stitches pulling with every breath, but I didn't have time to feel it. Nathan's men were out there, their eyes on me, and the truth I carried was a ticking bomb. I was Avon, the quiet one, the one who was supposed to break. But I was awake now, and they'd learn what that meant. I eased onto a sagging couch, the springs groaning under my weight. My fingers traced the jacket's frayed cuffs, grounding me as I spread out what little I had. A burner phone, a notebook, and a photo of Dad in his uniform, his eyes tired but resolute. I whispered, "I'm not done, Dad," my voice swallowed by the distant rumble of a train. The safe house was temporary, a pause in a war I hadn't chosen but couldn't walk away from. I dialed Lena, my sister, hoping blood still meant something. Her voice came through, sharp as a blade. "You should have signed, Avon. You're ruining everything Dad worked for." My chest tightened. "They shot me, Lena. They tried to kill me." She sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Nathan promised protection, but you're making it impossible." The words cut deeper than the bullet, her betrayal a fresh wound. "You're with him?" I said, my voice steady despite the ache. "You're unstable," she snapped. "Always have been." I ended the call, my hand trembling as I set the phone down. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as the truth settled. My own sister was helping the man who wanted me dead, guarding whatever power Dad left behind. I pushed the hurt aside, letting it fuel me. In the closet, I found the fireproof box I'd hidden years ago when Dad's late-night warnings about classified files first sank in. Inside were his letters, mission logs, and a flash drive wrapped in cloth. I plugged it into a battered laptop, the screen flickering to life. Lines of code and progress bars filled the display, each file a piece of Dad's legacy, evidence of arms deals, corrupt officials, names that could topple empires. I uploaded them to a secure server from my army days, the laptop's fan whirring like a countdown. This was my insurance, a promise the truth wouldn't die with me. The burner phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in, headlines screaming. "Unstable veteran poses threat. PTSD victim lashes out." Clips showed me in the hospital, clutching Dad's jacket, edited to make me look fragile, broken. Nathan's network was working fast, painting me as a liability before I could speak. Rage burned in my chest, but I didn't scream. Instead, I turned on the laptop's camera, the jacket framed behind me. "My name is Oven," I said, voice steady. "I am not broken. I am awake. And the truth you're afraid of will see daylight." I saved the video, timing my move carefully. Let them think they had the upper hand. A knock on the door jolted me, louder than the rain outside. I froze, heart hammering, and approached, finding a package on the stoop. No return address, the brown paper damp. Inside was a grainy photo of Lena's son, my nephew, walking home from school, his backpack swinging. A note in black ink read, "Stay silent or he disappears." My breath caught, the room closing in. My hands shook as I set the photo down, rage and fear warring inside me. "You think this will stop me?" I whispered to the empty air, my voice calm but steel-edged. I sank into a chair, clutching Dad's dog tags, their cold metal grounding me. His voice echoed from years ago. "The hardest battles are with yourself." I made my choice. I wouldn't let fear cage me. I encrypted the files, Dad's and new ones from a contact, and sent them to Rachel, a journalist who'd exposed police corruption before. My message was blunt. "If I go silent, publish everything." Her reply was instant. "Understood, we'll protect the source." I exhaled, the ticking clock now a rhythm of defiance. There was no turning back. Evening fell, the rain a steady drum beat. I slipped outside, Nathan's men leaning against cars across the street, their eyes tracking me like hawks. I kept walking, head high, hands in my pockets. At a storefront window, I caught my reflection. Dad's jacket, my tired but unbroken eyes. "They think I'm afraid," I muttered. "But I'm not." I stepped into an alley, texting Riley, my contact. Ready to finish this, the screen went dark as I tucked the phone away, the jacket's weight a reminder of the promise I carried. Delay was a mistake. Headlights flared, tires screeching as a black SUV roared toward me. I dove behind a dumpster, heart pounding as boots hit the pavement. "She's here," a voice barked. "Nathan's men." I scrambled, my shoulders screaming, and sprinted down a side street, their shouts close behind. A bullet grazed the brick beside me, chips flying. I ducked into a construction site, weaving through scaffolding, my combat training kicking in. I climbed a ladder, their flashlights slicing the dark below, and waited, breath shallow until they passed. I dropped to the ground, pain flaring, but kept moving, slipping into the city's shadows. I caught a dawn train across town, the wheels screeching like a warning. Portland's gray light filtered through as I stepped off at a forgotten station near the freight yard. The air smelled of rain and steel, keeping me sharp. I walked to a diner, the kind where tired workers nursed coffee before long shifts. Riley sat in a corner booth, his rough hands around a chipped mug, steam curling up. "Sit," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. "You need to see this." I sat, wincing as my stitches pulled, and opened the envelope. Transaction records, names, numbers. Some I recognized from Dad's files. These were bigger than Nathan, bigger than me. Names tied to arms smuggling, men who traded blood for profit under badges and titles. Riley's eyes met mine, tired but fierce. "This is a war you can't walk away from." "I never intended to," I said, sliding the papers back. My voice was calm, but each word cost a breath. We finished our coffee in silence, his worry mirrored in the diner's window. As I stood to leave, he said, "Be careful." The cold bit harder outside, the envelope tucked under my jacket, close to my skin. Hours later, another package arrived at my new hideout, a rundown motel room, the neon sign buzzing outside. My hands shook as I tore it open. Another photo of my nephew, this time at a park, laughing on a swing. The note was the same. "Stay silent." Rage surged, but I forced it down, channeling it into focus. I moved to a new safe house, a cramped apartment above a pawn shop. But as I unpacked, the lights flickered, and a low hum vibrated the walls. I froze. A faint click from the door. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, heart racing, and crouched behind the couch. The door creaked open, a shadow slipping inside. I lunged, pinning the intruder, only to see a courier's uniform. "Package," he gasped, dropping a burner phone before fleeing. The phone's screen lit up. "You're running out of time." I relocated again, this time to a basement flat, but Nathan's reach was long. A car chase erupted as I left, his men tailing me through Portland's narrow streets. I floored the gas, weaving through traffic, their headlights glaring in my rear view. A bullet shattered my side mirror, glass spraying. I swerved into an industrial lot, abandoning the car and sprinting through warehouses, their shouts fading as I lost them in the maze. My shoulder burned, blood seeping through the bandage, but I kept moving, the jacket's weight my anchor. I walked the final stretch to the abandoned naval yard, rust streaking the fences, the sky heavy with coming rain. Nathan was there, leaning against a black SUV, 2 armed men at his side. His smirk was confident, but his eyes betrayed a twitch. "You could have lived quietly, Avon," he called as I approached. "Now you'll leave quietly." I stopped, close enough to see the lines on his face. "Let's not pretend, Nathan. You're here because you're afraid." His laughter was sharp, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Afraid of you?" He shook his head, pulling a folder from his coat, my name highlighted, words like mental instability, violent tendencies. "One call and you're done." I let him talk, then pulled the recorder from my pocket, pressing play. His voice, arrogant from a drunken call, filled the air. "Arms deals, easy money, who cares about a few bodies if the check's clear?" His smirk cracked, his men shifting uneasily. A phone buzzed. One of his men glanced at it, his face paling. "Federal investigation into arms smuggling underway," the headline read. Nathan's jaw tightened, his fingers crushing the folder. "It's over," I said, stepping forward, boots scraping gravel. "The sky's already moving." A car screeched to a halt, and Lena stepped out, her face pale, hair pulled tight. "I'm here to mediate," she said, her voice flat. Nathan's eyes lit with relief. "Talk sense into your sister." I saw Lena's hands tremble, her glance at my pocket where a second flash drive hid. "Lena," I said, calm but firm, "choose now." She swallowed, eyes glossy, then turned to Nathan. "She's right. You've gone too far." Nathan's face twisted, rage and confusion colliding. "You said you'd handle her," he roared, pulling a gun. I braced, ready for pain, but Lena moved faster, smacking his wrist. The gun flew, clattering on the concrete. "Enough," she screamed, her voice raw. Nathan stumbled, shocked, as sirens wailed closer, blue lights strobing the rusted walls. Federal agents swarmed the yard, weapons raised, shouting commands. Nathan's men froze, then dropped to their knees, zip ties snapping tight. Nathan tried to run, but Lena tackled him, fists pounding, her screams lost in the chaos. Helicopters roared above, spotlights slicing the dark. The sky moved. A living judgment. Nathan shouted, "This isn't over!" as agents dragged him away, his threats empty against the rain's drumbeat. I dropped to my knees, the jacket pulling around me, cold seeping into my bones. Lena sank beside me, her hand brushing mine before pulling back. "I couldn't let him kill you," she whispered, tears streaking her face. An agent paused, her eyes hard but kind, nodding. An acknowledgement of the cost I'd paid. The rain fell harder, washing over us. I pressed my forehead to the jacket, Dad's aftershave faint in the fabric. His voice echoed, "Storms don't always destroy. They clear the rot." I wasn't the woman who knelt on that Seattle street, forced down by a badge and a lie. I had scars now, proof I'd fought, survived. Lena's voice broke the silence. What do we do with the pieces? Her eyes, full of questions, searched mine. The depot buzzed with agents, Nathan's rants fading as they loaded him into a van. I stood, the jacket heavy but warm. First, we gather what's left, I said. She nodded, determination flickering in her tear-streaked face. The sister I'd once known coming back to life. Then, I continued, letting the rain carry my words, we build something better. The morning air smelled of new beginnings as we stepped out of the federal building. Lena's question lingered, what do we do with the pieces? But the answer was forming, built on the scars we carried. The drive to the hospital was quiet, the roads reflecting the breaking clouds. Sunlight cut through in thin beams, a promise of something unbroken. In the waiting room, I held the jacket, its faded colors soft under my finger. Lena sat beside me, her cheek bruised, hands restless. We watched the sunrise, light turning rust into something almost beautiful. I didn't think I'd have the courage, Lena whispered, eyes on the glass. Neither did I admitted, adjusting the jacket. But we did. She exhaled, years of fear leaving her. They say Nathan's arrest is just the start. His network's crumbling. I nodded. It was always bigger than him. About fear, control. Her eyes met mine, wet with regret. I thought siding with him would protect us. I know, I said, seeing the sister who'd once braided my hair, who'd stood up when it mattered. You chose differently when it counted. The neighborhood greeted me days later, its cracked sidewalks familiar under my boots. News vans had left, but whispers lingered. Some neighbors nodded with gratitude, others turned away, fear or anger tightening their faces. At the community center, chairs creaked under the weight of silence. An older man stood, voice sharp. You brought trouble, Avon. Raids, agents. You brought it here. I met his gaze. It was already here. I just refused to kneel again. The room stilled, people weighing their own choices. A woman in the back nodded, clutching her child's hand. At the cemetery, I knelt by Dad's grave, the jacket draped over the stone. I get it now, I whispered. Why you fought. Why you kept secrets. A breeze lifted the jacket's edge like it was reaching for the sky. I sat there, letting grief move through me without drowning me. For the first time, I breathed in the quiet. Walking home, I saw kids on bikes, a mother calling them for lunch. A boy struggled with his bike chain, frustration creasing his face. I knelt, showing him how to fix it, my hands steady. Thanks, Miss Avon, he said, his gap-toothed grin bright before he pedaled off. I touched the jacket scrap in my pocket, a reminder that some battles leave scars worth carrying. I wasn't invisible anymore. The neighborhood, once a cage, felt like a place I could shape. I whispered to the breeze, no more kneeling. Stepping onto my porch, I closed the door on the past but left it unlocked for what came next. The storm was coming, and I was the lightning.